What's going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Monday. And you know what? It's funny. It's very funny because I was talking to Flex earlier today. We were chatting about what we were going to do for the day, what video was going to go up. And we were going, you know what? These international breaks, not a lot happens and everyone's on holiday at the moment, and there's not really a lot of news going on. We know that the managerial search is happening. We know that there's a shortlist. It's probably going to be Poch or Ten Hag, but there's not really a lot of stuff to get into. And we were like, we're not really sure what really to do. And then boom, as I would say, because what a story that is broken from Sky Sports. New Sky Sports reporter, senior reporter, Melissa Reddy, and boy was she. Because she has done a fantastic, I really, really recommend that you go to the Sky Sports website and read this or go on social media. I'm sure if you go on Sky Sports News and you watch the segment whenever it does come up, it's a fascinating report that's been filed here. And it has to do with what Ralf Rangnick's role is going to be going forward at Manchester United once his interim manager position, or tenure, shall we say, ends. What the situation is when it comes to the shortlist of people that Manchester United are speaking to, looking towards, what in an ideal world they'd be looking towards. Richard Arnold. There is just so much when it comes to leaks and briefs and Manchester United's awareness of them and what they want to do to counteract them. It's a fantastic and really insightful bit of reporting. So as I mentioned, I really recommend that you go and read it. But we'll start off talking about Ralf Rangnick, because everyone has asked when it comes to Ralf, what's he going to be doing? What's Ralf Rangnick going to be doing after the season is over? Once we get in that new manager, or even when we're in the process of trying to find that new manager, what's Ralf Rangnick going to be really doing? And the idea is, and the report is rather, that we don't really know, and Manchester United haven't quite figured that one out yet. Now, this comes from Sky Sports News, as I mentioned. Shout out again, Melissa Reddy. Fantastic report. Says Manchester United have still not internally outlined the nature of Ralf Rangnick's consultancy role, but it's envisaged to be, quote, not very hands-on. That will be continued. No meetings have taken place yet with the interim manager regarding the design of his future position, which comes into effect on June 1st. United's hierarchy took the decision to put strategic planning on hold to allow Rangnick to fully focus on trying to salvage the season through coaching. As such, even the basics of the agreement, like where the German would be based, have not materialized. It's wild. It's really wild. So a lot of people have been thinking, and I guess working with somewhat of an assumption, that Ralf Rangnick was going to become possibly a sporting director kind of figure at Manchester United. Well, that doesn't look like it's happening either, because, again, according to this report, Manchester United's Champions League exit allows more time for some forward planning, but the notion Rangnick could operate as a loose version of a sporting director, helping John Murtough and Darren Fletcher knit a solid strategy behind the scenes, has been labelled, quote, hugely unlikely, end quote. Sources have intimated his role in all probability will be centered around sharing insights on innovation, scouting, and linking the club with bright football minds rather than fundamentally altering their setup. It was highlighted that consultancy, in its essence, suggests separation and independence. United is set to lean on Rangnick's in-depth knowledge of the squad and what is required to build a strong collective for a progressive on-pitch identity. Now, what does that mean? If you've ever been in like the business world, or you've been in like the marketing world, or everyone's been in those kind of meetings, right? When people start using big, fancy business terminology, that's what it kind of felt like in that point. And there is so much to get into there. We've said this several times, certainly I have here on the channel, that for me, Ralf Rangnick's most effective position isn't actually on the touchline. It's, with the executives. It's in the stands, or it's in the boardroom, or wherever it may be. That's where Ralf Rangnick is most effective. So it really does worry me that he's not going to be very hands-on in his post-interim tenure. He's not really going to be involved in the recruitment of the manager. He's not really going to be involved in the recruitment of players. He's not really going to be involved in anything. It's just a case of he's going to be under contract. So if we're debating something, you or I, and we're like, oh, I'm not really sure, they'll go, maybe give Ralph a call, see what he thinks. That's really what they're using him as. It's a consultant, and I guess maybe that's why we shouldn't be surprised, because it's the fundamental idea of a consultant in that they're not really involved in anything. It's just a case of when the time comes for someone for some extra knowledge, or the time comes for an extra opinion, they'll ring up the consultant. The consultant will consult on whatever discussion they're having, and then they'll put the phone down, and it means really nothing. It's just a bit of an opinion. If I was in this position, this is what I would do. That's about it. And it's just a case of, well, he was the manager for 6 months or something like that. He knows the players relatively well, but we'll only go to him when we really want to go to him. That's kind of the idea. And that just seems odd. Really, really odd. It continues, the analysis the interim manager provides on the squad will stretch well beyond the tactical and technical to drill down into how United can improve recruitment, not only in a stylistic sense, but character-wise too. However, reports that he is heavily involved in the decision-making process over the club's permanent manager are incorrect. RANGNICK has done what has been asked of him, which is to concentrate on coaching. So that's the situation with Ralf Rangnick, in that Manchester United still do not know what his future looks like, really, after the season is over. He's not going to be involved in a sporting director sense. And this is what I kind of said yesterday on the Full View. With the whole Paul Mitchell news, and people were getting really excited because Paul Mitchell, he was the director of football, technical director, whatever his title was. He was involved at Monaco. And obviously he had worked with Pochettino at Southampton, Tottenham. He had worked with Ralf Rangnick at Leipzig. They were spotted together watching a Manchester United under-23 game a couple of weeks ago, and everyone was getting really excited. Oh, Paul Mitchell's coming in. We're going to have this set up, Ralf, and he's going to be in there with possibly Paul Mitchell, maybe Poch, or maybe Ten Hag, all this kind of stuff. And I said it last night, I look at the situation there and I go, well, where would Paul Mitchell fit in terms of that corporate structure? We've got a director of football. We've got a technical director. Do you really think that they're going to want to, give away some more power? There have been rumours about a deputy director of football, but Paul Mitchell's a very senior figure. And considering the work he's done throughout football, he's not going to come in and be a deputy, even at a club like Manchester United. So I looked at that and I went, okay, that's good, but where's he going to come in? Ralf Rangnick can't even get into this structure. Not for a lack of quality or a lack of expertise, but I guess by incompetence somewhat. They want Ralf as just a guy that they can pick up the phone to one day if they need some advice, and it's like, okay, boom. That's it. They're treating him like Arse Jeeves. Realistically, oh, I'm not really sure about this one. Let me go and ask Jeeves. Boom, 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 boom. Ask Ralf. Boom, 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 boom. I think you should go after this player. Cheers, Ralf. Next one. And that is really worrying because Rangnick, I was under the assumption that realistically, the idea we'd brought Ralf Rangnick in is, he was godfather of the Gegenpress, and he has a coaching expertise, and he's experienced in trying to get a tactical philosophy implemented in a squad. But realistically, the real value in Ralf Rangnick was bringing him in for the next couple of years. Him being involved in making those football decisions, right? A football guy making football decisions at the club. That's what we've needed for a long time. And he's not involved. He's offering an opinion when he's asked of it. And you know what? I look at Ralf Rangnick's situation from his perspective and I go, good for you, Ralf. Because he absolutely knew when he was getting offered the job to be the interim manager, he said, no, I want to have something afterwards. I want to be able to contribute, or at the very least, I want to make sure that, I'm set up later on. And good for him, because that's what this whole thing does. It reeks of panic, doesn't it? Realistically, it reeks of panic. Manchester United, in the middle of the season, it wasn't going well under Ollie. They got rid of Ollie and they panicked. They didn't know what to do. They went for Poch. PSG played hardball. They weren't interested in Conte. And then they went, okay, interim managers. Ralf, you're coming. And he went, I see a very desperate side here. Okay, so either you bring me on as a consultant role afterwards, or I'm not going to come in. Yeah, consultant, 2 years, brilliant, boom, boom, boom. Sign the contract. And they're like, now they're discussing of, what does that even mean? What a consultant? Basically, Ralf just gets paid. Ralf just gets paid to, sit wherever and offer his opinion when needed. Good for him. It speaks volumes to the chaos and, I guess, incompetence in the recruitment process at Manchester United. And that's a problem. The most effective thing with Ralf Rangnick is his building of clubs. It's him being a football man, in making football decisions in a sporting director role. If it's at Leipzig or wherever, that's where he's most effective. And we're not using him in his most effective position. Yes, he can offer bits of advice, but so can everyone. I mean, I'm sure they could call up any ex-player or any ex-manager, and they do, to offer advice, but they don't get paid for it. That is so staggering, so staggering, and that is, again, it's alarming. I personally, myself, I find that alarming that you have Ralf Rangnick, you have someone that can be effective in a sporting director position, who can be effective, in that sort of more executive role in the club or directorial role in the club, and he's not being involved in that. He's not going to be very hands-on. It's not envisaged to be very hands-on. It's madness. It really is. Now, this report continues with several aspects of what's going on at Manchester United. Like I said, it really is quite wild. So it speaks on Richard Arnold, obviously Manchester United's new chief executive officer, who has been described as a contrast to Ed Woodward, as he is more collaborative and grants greater responsibility to staff, and was, quote, incredibly open to the idea of recruiting Rangnick in a dual-purpose capacity. It is understood Arnold is invested in widening the brains trust at the club and is keen to have Rangnick's, quote, knowledge on tap until 2024. But his core expertise, structurally overhauling a club and implementing sustainable, successful methodology, has so far gone unused. And that's really the big thing here. And I think that whole bit there where it said that Arnold is keen to have Rangnick's knowledge on tap until 2024, that really gives you a real insight, really what Rangnick is going to be doing. He's not going to be overhauling the club in terms of structure. He's not going to be overhauling the club in terms of style of play. He's not going to be overhauling the club in terms of advising who the next manager should be or interviewing who this next manager is going to be. He's not going to be involved in player recruitment, staff recruitment, whatever. He is just going to be a knowledge on tap. That is all he is going to be, is a guy that if they're debating things, let's get Ralph on the phone, see what he thinks. That is it. And for me, that seems like a massive waste of resources. You've got this resource right there. This is a club that's so keen on return on investment that sometimes we play players, but just because the fact that we paid so much money for them and they've got to come good because we spent so much money on them, that you've got this resource here in Ralf Rangnick and you're not going to use him in the most effective means possible, which to me is just bizarre. And at the same time, you've got people in these director positions like John Murtough, and I understand John Murtough's been at the club a while, but say Darren Fletcher is technical director, and I'm not knocking Darren Fletcher, I'm really not. But you've got a guy like Darren Fletcher who's incredibly inexperienced in a role of that magnitude. He's been spread so thin this season in terms of what his role even is at the club. He had to come out and explain what it was, working with the youth team, maybe being involved in recruitment processes, being involved in liaison and with other executives in the club, whatever it may be. You've got someone who's so inexperienced in that role. It makes so much sense to have Ralf Rangnick as maybe the technical director and Darren Fletcher a deputy technical director, and then in a couple of years, once Darren Fletcher's experienced, then he takes over that role, instead of having someone in that role who frankly is inexperienced for a club like Manchester United. I understand he's played for the club a long time, he understands the club inside and out, but at this point we're in a point where we need overhaul. We need someone that's experienced in doing overhaul. And that's just the crazy thing to me. I really just don't see that. It's wild. It really is wild. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below, because I guess it shouldn't be surprising, because the fact that every single time he's been asked in a press conference, what's your role after this season, he's gone, I don't know, I haven't really spoken about it. The fact that he was called a consultant, the fact that he's just referred to it as a consultancy role, I guess we can't be shocked and surprised when it comes out he's just that. He's just a consultant. And he's just going to be consulted occasionally and earning a good paycheck doing it. And again, good for him, because that's the situation. That's the state of play at Manchester United right now. Now, again, coming from this report from Sky Sports, we have an update when it comes to the managerial search at Manchester United. We have an update when it comes to Thomas Tuchel and him being considered. Manchester United have reportedly distanced themselves from coverage suggesting that they are circling around Thomas Tuchel amid Chelsea's uncertain future, with one source describing it as, quote, media talk, not reality. They maintain there is a 4-man shortlist being considered to take charge of the club, which does not feature the reigning European Cup winning manager. Now, United, of course, are aware that the opening move for a new ownership group at Stamford Bridge will be able to secure Tuchel's future. And obviously, Tuchel has been pretty opposite actually wanting to leave Chelsea, so it looks very unlikely that he would go. So that one's kind of off the table, and he never was really going to go, let's be honest. Again, I think people were looking at the RANGNICK-Tuchel relationship going, that could work, but we now know Rangnick's not even involved. Even if Thomas Tuchel came in, he would not be working with Ralf Rangnick next season unless he picked up the phone and used Ralph's consultancy powers, because he's not going to be involved day-to-day at the process. He's going to be very hands-off. So even the idea of, well, maybe we could convince Thomas Tuchel, no, we couldn't, because Ralf Rangnick's not involved in that process. Scrap that one, in the bin, done. So this 4-man shortlist consists of Mauricio Pochettino, Erik ten Hag, Julian Lopetegui and Luis Enrique. They are the options reportedly being vetted by Manchester United. Now, obviously, when it comes to Luis Enrique, the Spanish national team boss is proving to have the most complex situation to navigate given the World Cup in December. The club reportedly want a manager in situ ahead of the new season, but suggestions that a pre-agreement could be struck by the end of the month are, as one employee put it, overly optimistic. So all of this stuff that we have heard the last couple of days about Manchester United are looking to secure a new manager by the end of March, or they're hoping by March it'll be wrapped up, or they can make an announcement by the end of the month. This reported employee is going, pretty optimistic, and of course it is. Like, it's 10 days. What Manchester United are going to announce in 10 days' time who the manager is going to be at the end of at the start of next season. Very unlikely. Of course it's very unlikely. Especially when you look at the options involved that they're talking about here. We spoke about this before, didn't we? Mauricio Pochettino, of course, didn't go well for him at the weekend with PSG. The club, actually, frankly, is in a bit of chaos when it comes to Mbappe possibly leaving, when it comes to Neymar possibly leaving, when it comes to even the manager's going to probably be gone. Obviously, the Champions League collapsed, and they lost at the weekend too. But they're going to win the league, and again, it would be somewhat odd before that's officially done and secured to be like, oh, and he's going to become the Manchester United manager next season. Also, Manchester United, and this comes later on in the report, but Manchester United have realised actually to buy Pochettino out of his contract is quite expensive. So they would be like, actually, we would prefer for him to get sacked. That's not going to happen until the end of the season. They're not going to get this far into the season and go, oh, and just before you've won Liga, we're going to sack you now. They'll wait till the end of the season to do all that. And that's necessarily time that maybe Manchester United don't have. Erik ten Hag, again, if a pre-agreement or an announcement was made about a pre-agreement came out, how would that affect Ajax? I mean, how many points are they ahead in the Eredivisie? 5, 6. They had that big win at the weekend, but they're still in a title race. It's still quite close, and that potentially could upset some of the Ajax players, or it could offset their form, and Ajax wouldn't want to do that. So realistically, that's going to happen. Julian Lopetegui at Sevilla. Obviously, they're not going to win the La Liga now. They've actually dropped off quite significantly in that title race. I mean, El Clasico last night, by the way, was madness. But even so, they're still going to be competing for top 4 in La Liga, and they won't want to be off-put by their manager going elsewhere. He's done it before. When it comes to the Spanish side in Real Madrid, back in, when was that, 2018? That was wild. So I don't think he would want to do the same thing again. That's my point. And of course, Luis Enrique, I mean, he's got a World Cup at the end of the year. So it's difficult to kind of get that pre-announcement out there. That, again, for me, that would be the best way to do it, but it's going to be looking very difficult there. Now, again, the report continues. There is some bafflement from Manchester United over why Lopetegui and Enrique have been faded out of talks surrounding the job. Multiple sources have admitted they would be surprised if Pochettino or Ten Hag were not at the helm. So that's kind of really what we've already known, is that Pochettino and Ten Hag, it's going to be probably one of those two. And as is, I guess, somewhat in the fan base, I think if you're going to do percentages, probably you'd say about 70-30, probably want Ten Hag over Poch, I would say. There are people like myself that I just say they're very similar and I support either. But reportedly, there is a split over Ten Hag and Poch. The Argentine would not require an adjustment to the league to a club of such scale, or even having to pit his wits against Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp. I did raise my eyebrow at that, to be fair. But Pochettino, and this is when the people that don't like Poch, I saw this on social media, were very angry by this next bit. Pochettino is seen as the concrete choice to rival Manchester City, Liverpool and Tuchel's Chelsea, given he stacked up wow to the former two while on severely restricted resources at Tottenham. His work at Spurs, Southampton and Espanyol have been given more attention than the spell at Paris Saint-Germain, but the problem has not been the manager, as the successes of Carlo Ancelotti, Unai Emery and Thomas Tuchel after departing have proven. So that's quite interesting when it comes to United's perspective on Pochettino, and I agree with the point about it's difficult to judge Poch based on PSG, considering, as the report mentions, Carlo Ancelotti's had success after leaving PSG. Unai Emery's had success after leaving PSG. Thomas Tuchel, oh my goodness, so much success after leaving PSG. The bit where I do go, where it says that he's seen as the concrete choice to rival Manchester City, Liverpool and Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea. That is big words, in my opinion. Of course, they would have to have faith in that, but that to me is somewhat different because, you know, those three teams have evolved since he was in the Premier League, right? I mean, when did he get sacked by Spurs? 2019? We're talking about 3 years ago, and I would say City, Liverpool and Chelsea have all got better than they were 3 years ago. Obviously, when he was there, he might have had a good record, say, against Liverpool or, say, against Chelsea, or certainly had a good record against Poch's City. That's probably Poch's City, Pep Guardiola's City. That's probably fair. But again, I think City have improved since then. And I think that's difficult to judge how he would possibly fare given his past record against those sides. I'm not too sure about that. Regarding Ten Hag, United are reportedly aware that Ten Hag is the popular choice, and the Mark Overmars scandal, and obviously Mark Overmars, I believe he was announced today as the new director of football or director at Antwerp in Belgium. But that scandal has reportedly made it easier to prize him away from Ajax. However, there remains question marks over how he would function in a completely different structure and at a club of the size, stature, and unrelenting pressure and attention as Manchester United, which I think is probably a lot of the cons that some of the United fans are saying. They enjoy his style of football. They appreciate that he is a manager that's probably ready to take the next step up and is someone that maybe Manchester United should take a chance on, take a risk on. The biggest question mark with him certainly is, can he adapt? Can he make that step up? But I suppose they will say you never know. You never know until you try. And I think considering the position of Manchester United at the moment, a lot of fans want to see Manchester United try something different. Just go for something different. Try for someone on the way up. Now, I don't see it as Poch on the way down, it must be said. But I can certainly... I think those question marks are valid, but again, Manchester United reportedly are aware that Ten Hag is the popular choice. And as KG said yesterday, they might be kind of forced into that situation of, you know what, considering how sort of toxic it's been at times and how divisive the whole Manchester United situation has been at times, we need a manager that, you know, most people probably want, and that at the moment would probably be Ten Hag. An interesting point here is that it also said that one source revealed, quote, in an ideal world, Julian Nagelsmann would walk into the club this summer, but there is a realization that he would not swap Bayern Munich until he can move to a stable Premier League option, primed to lift silverware. And I think that's quite fascinating, actually, to be honest with you, that in an ideal world, they're like, yeah, we'd want Nagelsmann. And it's like, well, get your head out your ass, really, if you think that's going to happen. You know, and I can understand their reasoning why, is because, again, Nagelsmann, obviously an up-and-coming coach. I mean, what is he, still in his 30s? Progressive way of playing. If you could get him to a club and he would speak, because of his age, potentially he could stick around for, 10, 20 years, 30 years if it all went well. And obviously that's what they would be looking for. But Nagelsmann, the time for Nagelsmann was last year, and he went from Leipzig to Bayern Munich. So that's not going to happen. And as the report mentions, a lot of people think that he would actually probably go to City or Liverpool once Guardiola and Klopp leave, which I think is true. So that's the situation when it comes to the managerial update. One thing I do want to talk about briefly as well is when it comes to going back to Ralf Rangnick's tenure as interim manager at Manchester United, because as the report mentions, and this is absolutely fascinating, I think this was probably after the Ralph's role being very unclear, this was absolutely just Manchester. This is what's wild about Manchester United. So the 63-year-old RANGNICK's temporary tenure has been coloured by some unsavoury leaks, despite him significantly improving the team's underlying metrics. United have, quote, a pretty good idea where the briefings are coming from and are keen to erase a self-serving culture. There is an appreciation that RANGNICK has not offered any counter leaks, opting for honesty during his media commitments instead. That's fascinating. That is an absolutely fascinating couple of paragraphs there, that Manchester United have a pretty good idea where the briefings are coming from. Now, they don't say a player. Why would they? You can come up to your own conclusions. But I'm interested to see what they do with that. It's great reading that. And I look at that and say, okay, you know where it's coming from. Your next opportunity in the summer, do something about it. Do something about it. Because I understand Manchester United are the biggest club in the world. I understand that people will make stuff up, and they do. They absolutely do. Journalists do. But it does feel like it's on another level when it comes to Manchester United. And it does feel like there's maybe more ammunition than is necessary than in comparison to other clubs. And Manchester United, in addition to finding a new manager, in addition to finding new players, in addition to sorting out their structure, in addition to all of that kind of stuff, that's one of the biggest challenges that they have this summer, one of the biggest tasks that they have to accomplish this summer. They have to eradicate all of this constant noise that comes out of Old Trafford, this constant, whether it's player leaks or unhappiness or we don't like the training, we don't like this, we don't like that. And I know you will probably never be able to completely eradicate it, because, again, that's journalism. That's what happens. But to have a bit of a stamp on it and be in control of that situation, control your narrative, that's the key thing there. And I agree that there absolutely should be an appreciation for Ralf Rangnick in terms of how he's handled the media. Obviously, I cover all the press conferences. I think that his press conferences have been excellent. I think he speaks very, very well. I think he's very transparent. I think he's very honest when he talks about players, when he talks about contracts, when he talks about transfers. Come to find out, he can be so honest because he's not involved in any of it. And when he says, I don't know, it's because legitimately he doesn't know about certain situations. But I think that he deserves some credit for that. Again, my key thing with that sentence, when they say they have a pretty good idea of where the briefs are coming from and are keen to erase a self-serving culture, look, do something about it. Do something about it. If you have a good idea where these briefings are coming from, you get rid of the player. And you say, I don't even care if they're super important to the team. I don't care if they're a key player in this side. We can't keep this culture going because that culture permeates through the entire club. That culture spreads like a virus, unfortunately. And that will continue to be the case. That's the problem at Manchester United. That's one of the biggest issues at the moment, is this constant leaks, briefs, all that kind of stuff. So if they're aware of it, they need to fix that, in my opinion. And how they do that? That's just one of the things that Manchester United has to do this summer, and it really is wild. So, huge stories, really, when it comes to the managerial search for Manchester United, that 4-person shortlist, when it comes to Ralf Rangnick's consultancy role, basically being not very hands-on, and just basically he waits. He's like the banker from Deal or No Deal. He just waits by the phone to ring, picks it up, gives his opinion, boom, puts it down. That's Ralf Rangnick's role at Manchester United, which is crazy. So yeah, so much when it comes to Rangnick and his future role at Manchester United, the leaks at Manchester United, the briefs, Richard Arnold's collaborative process by all accounts, and this 4-person shortlist. So let me know your thoughts on it all in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to United View, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.